The Israel-Palestine conflict is often presented by Western media in such a way that even when Israel defends itself from almost a century of barbaric violence, it is somehow presented as the aggressor. However, we at Citti Media and in India, and particularly Hindus, understand Israel's perspective as we have been subject to the same barbarity Israel witnessed on October 7th, 2023 for centuries. Our conversation today with David Mencer, a senior spokesperson from the Office of the Prime Minister of Israel, is therefore not to disdainfully and arrogantly finger wag at Israel during what is an exceptionally difficult time, but to allow an articulate Israeli voice to help others better understand perspectives which are not often explored by Western media or deliberately sidelined. Welcome to Citti Media. Namaste and Shalom, David.
Shalom to you. Thank you for having me.
So, may I start by asking if what's happening right now is actually a war between Israel and Iran, not Israel and the Palestinian people? If so, how did this come to pass? And what about the pre 1979 context before the Islamic regime took over? You were still being attacked and terrorized before Iran's Islamic regime, too, right? So, if you could speak a little bit about that.
So, thank you for having me, Pajita. Listen, we were attacked mercilessly on October the 7th. It was an attack which shocked us by its severity, but also its barbarity. The rapes, the beheadings, burning families alive, killing children in front of their parents and parents in front of their children. It's only 7 months ago that we witnessed these things. And these were, this was hatred and barbarism aimed at our people that we thought had been subjected to history. We, the Jewish people, thought that these things just didn't happen anymore. These were stories of the Holocaust, from the Second World War, from the pogroms in Russia and in Poland and other places in Eastern Europe. But we thought that when Israel was created, that this was to put an end to this sort of violence meted out against my people here in Israel. But unfortunately, we were wrong. And the terrible wake-up call of October the 7th is that there is a terrible level of Jew hatred which is nurtured, unfortunately, amongst the leadership of certainly of Hamas, but also of parts of the Palestinian Authority as well. We recognize this sort of hatred. We recognize this sort of evil. We've experienced this evil before. And we know that with this sort of evil, there's only one answer to it. It cannot be appeased. It cannot be discussed with. You cannot give into it. You can only stand up to it. And that's what we've done since October the 7th. The government here initiated three objectives of this war. The first one is to destroy Hamas politically and militarily. Number two, of course, is to get our 133 hostages back. They're very dear to our heart. Everybody knows their names here in Israel. They're our people. They're completely innocent. Every moment of the day that they're in custody is a war crime. And of course, the third one is to make sure that Hamas never again poses a threat, or Gaza poses a threat to our country, Israel, but also any civilization as well. Now, you mentioned Iran. We do realize that Iran is behind all the nefarious activities here in Israel. You mentioned the 1979 revolution because lots of Israelis look back with fondness at the good relations that existed between Iran and Israel. And we also here in Israel make a distinction between the Iranian people, who are as much victims of the Iranian regime than we are here in Israel. So we know this is a regime which persecutes its own people. And one of the ways they're trying to hold on to power in Iran is to attack us. And we also know that we were inching ever closer to better relations with Gulf states here. We've already done so much work with the Abraham Accords, with the UAE, with Bahrain, with other countries, with Morocco, with Sudan. We were inching closer to a deal with Saudi Arabia, maybe the most influential country in the Arab world. And this was a step too far for Iran because the regime in Iran, they're against democracy, they're against human rights, they're against freedom of religion, they're against coexistence. they're an Islamic fascist regime, and it stands to us here in Israel to stand up to them, and stand up to them we will, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Hmm. On the point of Iran, are you allowed to share with us with some clarity how Israel hit back after that quite shocking attack of more than 300 missiles and drones? Whatever you can share with us.
Sure. Well, there are two very important points to make about that attack which was made against Israel 2 weeks ago. 350 armed suicide drones, ballistic missiles, rockets were fired at us from Iran, but not only Iran, also from Yemen, also from Iraq, also from Lebanon and Syria, because that's the arc of terror which Iran is in control of. But Iran made a dramatic mistake. Not only was thank God, not only was the attack a dramatic failure, but Iran misread international opinion. They thought that all these condemnations in the United Nations, all these marches on the streets of New York and London and Paris and other countries, all of this they thought was support for the Iranian genocidal regime, but they were wrong on that, because a coalition of countries came together, together with Israel, but also the US, also the UK, also France, also other countries, which I don't want to mention here to save themselves. We came together to produce a coalition that nullified. We shot down 99% of their offensive missiles, ballistic missiles, suicide drones before, and they had almost no effect on us here in Israel. And that's been a dramatic learning for Iran now, because they realize that they have misread international opinion. There is a lot of criticism out there against Israel. It does strengthen our enemies. It emboldens our enemies. But when push comes to shove, ultimately these countries chose to stand by the only democracy in this region, this peace-loving, beleaguered country. We're facing a lot of criticism right now, but we are a democracy. We're standing up for the right. We're standing up for the rule of law. We're standing up against barbarism. And I tell you, Pujita, we will be successful. There is almost wall-to-wall support for this war here in Israel, because we realize that this is a war for our very existence. They want us gone from here. These fundamentalists, these terrorists, they don't want any state of Israel. They don't want to live in peace with us. They don't want any country. We realize that, and we will see them down.
It's good to hear, David, and there are many rooting for Israel, we in India are rooting for Israel, and because, like I said earlier, your battle has echoes with what's happening here in India as well. And like you rightly pointed out, it is ironical that there is criticism against Israel when Israel is the only functioning democracy in that part of the world. Let me I don't want to dwell too much on history, but I think we should do one question on not so much the history, but the ideology. If one were to point to an ideological difference as a source for this conflict, what would it be? This has been talked about through the years, I'm sure, but I think it bears repetition. Can you add something new which the West doesn't perhaps fully understand as to why an independent and successful Jewish homeland, in the place of its historical origin, is such a hated concept by those who seek to destroy you?
So, the land of Israel has held a central place in the life of the Jewish people since the dawn of time, since Moses, indeed, the ancient Moses, stood on the Mount Sinai and received the Torah, the Bible, which is, of course, the most read, published book in the history of mankind. It's held a central part in all of our lives. It's central to our existence. Our religion and our culture are very much centered around the land of Israel. And of course, for thousands of years, we, the Jewish people, have felt this discrimination living in other countries. I might say that one notable exception was of course India, where Jewish people were able to live free, and Indian emigres
Still
to
do. There Yeah, still
Israel,
do.
they still remind us of the fact of the hospitality and the kindness of the Indian people. And just on that point, on the India-Israel connection, all of us all of us here in Israel have a very warm spot in our hearts for India, because we still remember your prime minister frolicking on the beach, I think is the best word to say about it, with our prime minister, their shoes off, ankle deep in the Mediterranean Sea. Um, we know that India is one of the largest, if not the largest, democracies in the entire globe, and we are one of the smallest, and we have so much in common, so many shared values. We, of course, are in an extremely dangerous neighborhood. That's one thing which has also never changed throughout in thousands of years. We live in a very dangerous part of the world where, if not terrorists themselves, states are seeking to annihilate us. We have to be on our guard every single moment of the day. There is not one day since 1948 where this country has not had to stand on its borders defensively. We send our children into the army. There's conscription here. All of us serve here in Israel in one way or another. And but the thing to remember is about us is that there is only one Jewish state in the world, just the one. There are so many Christian states, tens and tens of Muslim states, and many other religions, but there's only one homeland for the Jewish people. Only one land where any Jew in the world, when he feels persecuted, can come and live in and be accepted to live in this land of Israel. And the famous saying says that home is the place that when you go there, they have to take you in. And that's exactly what Israel is, a homeland for the Jewish people, together with other religions. Other religions, the freedom of religion is enshrined in our Declaration of Independence. This is the only place where Christians, Muslims, and Hindu Sikhs can practice their religion in freedom and without persecution. And that's very, very important to us. So I remind you again of the important relationship between India and Israel. It's a very warm relationship. We thank so many Indians for their support during this difficult 7-month conflict. But I want to reassure you that we are coming close to the end of this conflict. We've defeated more than 18, 19 of Hamas's 24 battalions. The last 4 or 5 rest in Rafah, and they will be defeated. We're going for them. There are terrorists. They need to be cleared out of the way so we can get back to these Abraham Accords and coexistence, living with all our neighbors peacefully in this region.
As for a two-state solution, international bodies and then Israel post 1948 have offered statehood to Palestinians numerous times, but it has been rejected each time. Could you please help us better understand why, when you did so, your offers were always rejected? Um, and why do Palestinians leaders keep spurning, rejecting your offers for peaceful I mean, Israel has always expressed its desire for peaceful coexistence, and why does Palestine keep rejecting these offers?
So, Pajita, you're right, of course. This country will always put its hand out in peace, always first and foremost. It's in our very nature, it's in our DNA. We dream of living in peace in this region. It's part of the Jewish daily prayers. We say, Oseh Shalom b'momav, hu yaseh shalom. The God who makes peace, we desire peace. We have again and again made very generous offers to live in coexistence with all of the people in this region. But again and again, that hand has been refused, ignored, or even worse than that, war has been waged upon us. Now, look, there's a couple of points I want to make about this issue. Firstly, it would be obscene if, after the October 7th massacre, the worst pogrom, the worst example of Jew hatred and murder since the Holocaust, it would be obscene if the reward for that would be a Palestinian state. That said, it is Israel's long-standing policy, no matter what the government, I think there's wall-to-wall consensus here in Israel, that we feel that Palestinians should have all of the rights to govern themselves, all of them to govern themselves. But here's one right which they shouldn't have: the right to wage war on us, the right to affect our security. So all the rights to govern themselves, but none of the rights to wage war upon us. That's been the long-standing policy of all the governments here in Israel. It's the current policy amongst our Prime Minister now, and it certainly has wall-to-wall support amongst all the people here in Israel.
But post 7th October 2023, do you still believe that a two-state solution is possible? Does Israel still believe in a two-state solution?
Well, what I can tell you is Hamas are certainly not interested in a two-state solution. They're just interested in a solution without Israel. Their charter very clearly states that they want to kill not only the Jews here, but all the Jews around the world. Their charter also says that Jews, that means me, Pujita, and the 9 or 10 million other people living here, together with Jews, Muslims, Christians, Druze, they believe that we are descendants of pigs and monkeys. So this is a genocidal terrorist organization of which there is no chance of any sort of resolution. But I say to you again, our people here in Israel, we will always put our hand out to peace. The very symbol of Israel is the 7-branched candelabra called the menorah, or the Chanukiah, they're called the menorah. And around that that menorah, that 7-branch candelabra, are olive branches, because olive branches is, of course, the international symbol of peace, and it's the very essence of our being. When we say hello and goodbye to each other, we say the word shalom. It means hello. It means goodbye. It's also God's name, but it also means peace. We desperately want peace here. The pain and the suffering of all of our people, the families of the hostages, but also, we've lost 606 of our brave soldiers in this war just since October the 7th. But we're coming close to the end now. We're going to defeat this Hamas terror organization, and we're going to move to getting back to the Abraham Accords. And most importantly, the answer to whether there really will be peace in this region is the word de-radicalization. Those people which seek our destruction, we saw them, the same type of radicalism in Nazi Germany. But in 1945, the Allies did a great job of de-radicalizing Germany and other countries as well. And that's the same effort which we will now have to undertake once we have defeated Hamas.
So you're saying that de-radicalization of this area or the region is going to be your long-term strategy in dealing with this issue from now on?
Yeah, because that's what's happened in country. There are great examples of this in the United Arab Emirates, for instance, and in Saudi Arabia as well, where this policy has made their countries more outward-looking and less prone to terrorism and radicalism and Islamism. And we want that to take hold here in Israel as well, because there's no reason, aside for the genocidal wishes of the terrorists, that there should be war here. It's a very, very small land. It's tiny. It's about the size of, Israel's about the size of Wales in the UK, about the size of New Jersey in the US. It's an extremely small country, but we live in a very, very tough neighborhood. But we are making peace with our neighbors already, with Jordan and Egypt and other countries as well. But we need to have the Gazan population and the Palestinian people living in Judea and Samaria, the heartlands of the Jewish people. They also, unfortunately, need to go through this process of de-radicalization so that we can live together in peace, because they're not going anywhere and we are not going anywhere. So we must live together.
Just one question I think is pertinent. One of the allegations, about this war against Hamas in Gaza, there is allegations of genocide, of mass graves, of bombing hospitals, civilian homes. This is the narrative. So just one last final question: How would you counter this? Because this is what all the screaming protesters talk about.
So this is the narrative which Hamas instituted on October the 7th. They knew that they couldn't beat us militarily, but what they did was to try and they've succeeded in one sense in creating this narrative of civilian casualties. The truth of that narrative is that no country whatsoever, anywhere in the world, in the history of mankind, in the history of armed conflict, has been as successful as Israel has been in limiting the number of Gazan civilians we caught up in the battle. Every civilian, of course, is death is a tragedy, but we've always worked hard to move civilians out of harm's way and go for Hamas. Now, it's important to understand that when you see this sort of destruction in Gaza, this is because of the way Hamas fight. They fight from hospitals. You know, they fire at us from maternity wards, from the ER room, from the emergency room. From, you know, you can be sure, Panjita, that it wasn't the midwives that were firing at us. You know, they want to maximize. Hamas want to maximize civilian casualties against their own people because they know that will enrage the world, and that's what they've tried to do. In a certain sense, they have succeeded. But, you know, we believe here we're in a battle of good against evil, and we are very firmly on the good side, and we will be successful. Talks of mass graves, again, they are untruths. They are graves which have been created by Hamas themselves, and they try to pin the blame on us. Again and again and again, all the slurs against us have all been found to be untrue, one after the other after the other. Hamas seeks to maximize the casualties on their own side, and they blame Israel for it. But we're not falling for it, and we thank enlightened nations like so many in India who are not falling for it either.
Israel is often called an apartheid state. What is the truth about the average Muslim in Israel, and also about Palestinians who visit Israel frequently? I think a lot of people don't know that that is the reality. If you could just throw some light on this with just some, maybe one or two anecdotal insights. I don't want to take too much of your time, but if you could just, set the record straight, so to speak, for what life is actually like for Muslims living in Israel.
So this slur is another of the slurs, the libels, which is put up against us. And anyone that's spent more than a half a second here in Israel knows what a nonsense it is, because Arabs make up at least almost 2 million of our 9 or 10 million population here. So they're almost 20% of our population, and they occupy every single level in society, from Supreme Court judges to members of Knesset to doctors, nurses, pharmacists. In every level, in the senior echelons of Israeli society, you will find Arabs proudly serving and fulfilling their potential. And I think the ultimate crushing of that slur is just to ask Israeli Arabs, where would you rather live? And this has been asked of them many, many times. Where would you rather live? Here in Israel as a free Israeli citizen, or would you rather live in the Palestinian Authority? 90% of them say, thank you. I've seen what it's like in the Palestinian Authority, and I'll stay right here in Israel. Pujita, I don't say it's perfect here. I don't say there aren't problems. There are, as there are in every single society. But, in hundreds of miles in either direction, in every direction, this land here is the only land here in Israel that people can practice their religion freely. They can visit sites freely. We just finished celebrating the month of Ramadan. Tens of thousands of Muslims visited the Temple Mount and their holy site, the Al-Aqsa Mosque and Haram al-Sharif. They visited tens of thousands of them every day. The only time there has been freedom of access is when Israel was in control. We're very, very proud of this fact, but this slur, and I'm pleased to give you the opportunity, so that you've given me the opportunity to talk about this slur, because it is a slur. It just simply isn't true, and anyone that's spent any time here whatsoever gets that in an instant.
Finally, David, Prime Minister Modi, our Prime Minister, was also one of the first major world leaders to unequivocally call out the Hamas attacks as terrorism. What message do you have for Indian viewers as to what lessons we need to derive from the story of Israel and of the Judean people, so that we don't take, perhaps our greater size and relative immunity to the terrorism and barbarity you face lightly? What kind of message would you have for us, David?
So the first thing I would say, Pujita, is thank you. The word Jew comes from the Hebrew Yehuda, and Yehuda, the root of that word is hoda'ah, which means thanks. We are the people that say thank you, and we're in a difficult situation right now. And as the old adage says, you find out who your friends are in tough times, not in easy times, not when the sun is shining and everyone is marveling at Israel's lead in medicine, in agriculture, in high tech, with the latest discoveries. It's when the chips are down, when things are difficult, as they are right now. So we say thank you very much to the Prime Minister Modi for his support and for his condemnation. But the other thing I want to tell you in answer to your question is just to tell you, Iran and radical Islam, they're our enemy here in Israel, but they're your enemy as well. They're against democracy. They're against freedom of religion. They're against freedom to live your life the way you want to live it. They are Islamic fascist organizations, and we are seeing them down. But we're not only doing it for us, we're doing it for the free world. We're on the front line of this terror. We're on the front line of this attack on our civilizations. So many times in the past, India has also been been attacked by this radicalism. Radical Islam again and again rears its ugly face and has attacked Indians of all types. But we're on the front line of this civilization. And I'll tell you two things. Number one, we will be successful, but we're doing it not just for us. We're doing it for you as well. We're doing it for the civilized world, whether they realize it or not. And I believe in time, they will come to realize it.
Well, thank you, David. I know you have to leave. And once again, thank you so much for giving us your time. It goes without saying that we wish everyone, our Judean and Palestinian brothers and sisters, peace, security, and dignity. Mr. Mencer, thank you again so much for your time today. Namaste and shalom.
Shalom to you. Thank you very, very much for your time. Good to be with you.
Thank you.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.